Hello everybody, my name is Karryshh and welcome back to another recap video. Today it's a Korean latest horror anthology film. It consists of 5 stories and one conclusion story. It's kinda creepy, and since it was a supernatural horror instead of a murder mystery, I kinda liked it. But you decide for yourself after watching this video till end. Now on top of that, if you're new to my channel, then make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. It is free for you and it is something that helps me out a lot. You can also follow me on my Instagram to stay updated on the content I'm working on. With that said, sit back and relax as I recap Body Parts Korean horror. So this story starts in Korea inside an apartment where a cult is doing some weird ritual. The cult members had prayers written all over their faces, and there were 6 of them, all kneeling in front of their leader, praying to summon their evil god into our world. But among those 6 cult members, there was an outsider, a reporter named Si Kyung. She had snuck in with a hidden camera and she was recording everything. Now before all that began, Si Kyung met her partner Park. Park is also a reporter and he's kinda self-centered and more worried about his career than some cult. He thinks that the cult is just after money or something. This is because Si Kyung had gotten a note from the cult yesterday, and that note said some creepy stuff like keep your desires in your heart and the god will fulfill them soon. That note referred Si Kyung to bring some offering for the god, and that's why she had brought money. However, Si Kyung feels like the cult is definitely up to something shady, but Park doesn't really take her seriously. Anyway, tonight, something new happens in the cult. A guy named Benji brings an offering for the evil god. It's in a box, and whatever inside that box has a whole backstory, and that's when the scene cuts to that backstory. This story is about a girl named Mina who was acting crazy one night, saying stuff like that I won't spare anyone. Then she sees this perfume bottle and starts blaming all her problems on it. She puts the bottle away in her drawer, but suddenly she hears an evil voice. The voice tells her that it will grant her wish, but only if she cuts off her ears. That's why Mina, in this messed up state, grabs a knife and brutally slices her ears off. However, when she realizes what she has done to herself, she tries to stop, but the evil voice doesn't let her go until she stabs herself and dies. Right when she dies, this dark, evil energy bursts out of her body. Then the scene jumps to the future, where we meet a group of friends. They are Alice, Betty, Claire, and Alex. They had found out about Mina's death through the internet, and during their conversation, we learned that Mina is actually Alice's neighbor, though Alice didn't really know her. But today, Alice comes across a vanity mirror being sold on a second-hand shopping site. Now, Alice buys it, and then Alex ends up taking the mirror to Alice's place. Then after this, Alice sets up the vanity mirror in her room, and inside the drawer, she finds that same perfume bottle. She sprays it on her wrist and the scent was insanely good. She ends up spraying it everywhere and starts feeling kinda high, but suddenly, this dark energy comes out of the perfume bottle and goes straight into Alice's body, making her pass out. Alice then wakes up the next day and heads out with Alex to hang out. She goes and sits in his car, but soon, she finds out that she failed her nursing exam and her mood completely crashes. That's when that dark energy suddenly shoots right into her nose, and out of nowhere, Alice starts smelling something rotten in the car. But weirdly, Alex doesn't smell anything. The smell then gets so bad that Alice runs back home. The scene switches to Betty and Claire, and they're making fun of Alice for failing her exam. Soon, Alice shows up, and now there's a strong perfume smell coming off her. Claire and Betty ask her what perfume she's wearing, but suddenly, Alice starts smelling that awful stench coming from her friends, so bad that she has to cover her nose. She runs off again, and now everywhere she goes, she smells that same disgusting odor coming off people. That's why she rushes back home and sprays herself with the perfume like crazy. Basically, she has become addicted addicted to this perfume now. Alice starts spraying it on herself every hour, and eventually she completely stops leaving the house cause the smell outside is unbearable. A few days goes by and the perfume finally runs out. Now, Alice starts smelling that horrible stench coming from her own body, and no matter how much she showered, it just wouldn't go away. She got so frustrated that she started scrubbing her skin raw, so hard that she started bleeding. Even her nose started bleeding as well. Now that evening, Alex shows up at her house. He finds the front door wide open and inside the place is completely mess. Everything is broken and trashed. In one of the room, Alice shows up in front of him and she was acting totally weird, and soon Alex sees that Alice has cut off her own nose. Alice looks at Alex and asks, "Would you still love me now?" But Alex freaks out and pushes her away and he tries to run for his life. However, the evil energy locked the door. Alice seems possessed and completely out of her mind, and then she grabs a shard of glass and she stabs Alex from behind. She was actually going to unalive him, but in the end, Alex manages to knock Alice unconscious with the perfume bottle. Then immediately Alex calls an ambulance, but suddenly the unconscious Alice disappears, and in the very next moment, she shows up completely possessed like a demon and stabs Alex in the neck, brutally unaliving him. At this point, Alice is fully possessed by that dark energy, and the evil voice says that she's going to sacrifice a lot of people so the demon can come to life completely. Maybe this dark energy is related to the cult we saw earlier. And now the story ends and the scene cuts back to the present. We see that inside Benji's box was Alice's nose, which he had stolen as an offering for their god. The cult leader takes the nose and walks away, and meanwhile Park secretly calls Si-kyung outside the apartment. Si-kyung goes outside to talk, and now Park finally wants Si-kyung to snap some photos of the cult. But right then, a guy named Min-soo shows up outside. He starts giving Si-kyung suspicious looks, but thankfully she manages to avoid him and heads back inside the apartment. And after that, Min-soo locks the gate so no one can leave. Then the prayer continues and a cult member named Sion steps forward. She also brought an offering for their god, hoping her wish would come true. But there's a story behind what's inside her box as well. And now the scene shifts into that second story. Now in this story, a guy named Minho was being bullied by 4 people: Bob, Calvin, Derek and Dina. Calvin and Derek were dunking Minho's head underwater over and over, all cause Bob told them to. They were messing with him cause Minho kept saying he could see ghosts everywhere, and thanks to his claims, no one wanted to work at their company anymore since everyone thought the place is haunted. While getting beaten up, Minho suddenly spots a ghost standing behind Bob and he freaks Bob out by telling him. Bob gets pissed and he demands proof that Minho can actually see ghosts. Minho explains that regular people cannot see ghosts, but he knows a ritual that can open their third eye so they can all see him. Later, Minho heads home to grab his witchcraft supplies and Calvin and Derek follow him to keep an eye on him. Then, at Minho's place, it was obvious from the way his house was decorated that he might be involved in witchcraft. Now while snooping around, Calvin finds some homemade wine that Minho plans to use to summon spirits, but Calvin thinks that they should drink it. Anyway, after getting all the witchcraft stuff, they go back at the building. All the bullies sit down to eat and drink, but Bob scolds Minho and tells him to prepare the ritual so they can finally see spirits. Upon this order, Minho sets up the talisman, lights black candles and starts chanting, and then stops everyone from eating. He brings out his ghost wine and claims that the spirits have already consumed it, so now they all need to drink it as well. Only after this they will be able to see ghosts. Calvin was already eager to drink the wine, so he pours it into everyone's glass without hesitation. The 3 guys drink it, but Dina refuses because she doesn't trust Minho, and she was right. Suddenly, all 3 guys starts foaming at the mouth and they die brutally. Minho laughs in this creepy evil way and runs off, and Dina escapes, saving her own life. However, after a while, the 3 guys wake up, so maybe that wine wasn't that poisonous. Their stomachs were aching And then Minho's voice comes from somewhere and he was challenging him to come find him. Obviously, all three guys were pissed at him, so they storm off to look for him. Bob and Calvin reach this area filled with talisman hanging everywhere, and they decide to split up and start searching for Minho separately. Meanwhile, Derek's stomach starts hurting badly, so he tries to sneak toward the exit, but on the way, he runs into this creepy, evil-looking guy just standing there. And yeah, this guy is actually a ghost. Remember, Minho promised that they will be able to see spirits, and he kept his promise. The scene cuts to Bob, who finds Minho sitting with another man near an evil altar. Minho tells Bob that they will be able to see the dead now, and then the other man stands up, and he was tall, freaky, demon-like creature. Bob panics and screams for Calvin. Calvin runs to help, but behind him suddenly appears two ghosts wearing these strange old traditional outfits. The spirits then starts jumping and dancing around him, and suddenly they attack Calvin. At the same time, the tall demon-like creature goes after Bob. Obviously, Bob runs for his life and finds Calvin, but by then, the ghost had already ripped off Calvin's eyes. Now the blinded Calvin stumbled around completely out of his mind when the tall demon grabs him from behind and crushes his skull, unaliving him brutally. Meanwhile, Derek almost makes it to the exit but runs into the ghost of a girl hanging from a noose. Terrified, he tries to quietly pass by her, but the spirit stares at him and Derek bolts. However, in the end, she uses the noose to grab him, pulls him back, and unalive him brutally. The scene cuts back to Minho, who was hearing evil voices, and those voices were telling him to murder. Then suddenly, Bob grabs Minho and he demands to know what the hell is going on, but Minho just laughs in this creepy way, and that's when the tall man appears in the hallway. This tall demon starts chasing Bob, who runs like hell and somehow makes it back to the dinner table. But when he gets there, he was in total shock. His own dead body and the bodies of his friends are lying there. Turns out, they actually did die from the poison, and now their souls are stuck in this spirit world. This realization hits Bob hard, and he starts begging Minho to bring him back to life, but it was useless now. Then, two more ghosts appear beside Bob, and the tall demon shows up behind him. In the end, tall demon grabs Minho and crushes his skull as well, and the story ends here. Now the scene cuts back to the present, where Sion opens her box, and inside are Calvin's eyes, which she stole as an offering for their god. And meanwhile, Park secretly tells Si-kyung to go record the cult leader, but she refuses. Then another cult member, Jung, notices Si-kyung talking, but luckily doesn't get suspicious. Si-kyung quickly tells Jung she brought 1 million won as an offering, which confuses him. Si-kyung then shows Jung the note she received from the cult earlier, and Jung tells her that the cult leader gave her a different message. Apparently, all the other members were told to bring body parts, but Si-kyung didn't get that order, which leaves her completely confused. After that, a girl named Mi-jin steps forward with her offering, and at the same time, Park suddenly loses the camera signal. Now Mi-jin begins telling her story, and once again, the scene cuts to the past. Now the third story, it's about a girl named Huang and her two friends Mi-jung and So-mi. From the subtext, we understand that Huang used to be a really sweet girl, but everything changed after her dad and sister died. After that, Huang completely spiraled. She started self-harming and speaking in weird languages that no one could understand. Eventually, Minjung and So-mi became convinced that their friend was possessed, so they created a website where they started posting videos of Huang, hoping the news would spread and maybe a priest would come forward to help. On the website, we learned that the church actually refused refused to perform an exorcism due to insufficient evidence. So Minjung and Somi installed CCTV cameras in Huang's room and even started a 24/7 live broadcast to monitor their friend and prove she was truly possessed. The scene jumps forward a bit, and in one of the videos, Huang's condition has gotten way worse. She is super aggressive now and even attacking people. Meanwhile, Minjung and Somi had set up a full broadcasting room to keep constant watch on Huang. Minjung was also trying to learn all the Bible, and eventually she decides to attempt an exorcism right there from the broadcasting room. She starts reading prayers from the Bible, and at the same time, the demon inside Huang wakes up and warns Minjung that if she doesn't stop, he will unalive her. Hearing that, Minjung freaks out and quickly wakes up Somi, but Somi needed to head home and she told Minjung to stop messing around with this stuff so much. Somi then leaves, and when Minjung looks back at the monitor, Huang isn't in her room anymore. Suddenly, Huan then shows up right in front of her, and the demon inside her uses its power to throw Minjung across the room. Then, Minjung gets a FaceTime call from Somi. On the other side, Somi is running for her life, completely terrified because now paranormal things have started happening to her as well. Somi hides in a corner and tells Minjung that something is following her. Minjung suggests they both start reading Bible verses together, but before Minjung can even say a word, the Bible snaps shut on its own, and a bunch of boxes fall out of the cabinet by themselves. Their video call starts glitching, and the demon grabs Minjung by the throat, but Minjung doesn't give up. She starts reading the Bible anyway, and possessed Huang crawls out from under the bed. The demon starts reacting in pain, but on the other side, evil spirits start attacking Somi as well. The paranormal activity goes completely out of hand, and the demon lifts both girls up into the air, laughing maniacally. However, they both keep chanting from the Bible. Because of those prayers, the demon starts getting weaker and weaker, and he has no choice but to let him go. The Bible verses start overpowering the demon, and now both girls demand the demon to tell them its name, but possessed Huang starts floating upside down in the air. Then, the demon screams that his name is Behemoth, king of the underworld, and finally Minjung manages to force Behemoth out of Huang's body. Huang vomits this black, disgusting stuff and then collapses on the bed, completely back to normal. Then it's morning now, and the two friends are relieved. They actually saved her. They were celebrating that they finally rescued their friend, but just then, a woman walks into the room. This woman is actually one of those cult members, and she starts chanting an evil prayer, and the demon transfers straight into her body. The woman then stabs Huang to death on live broadcast with a pair of scissors, brutally unaliving her. Minjung and Somi scream in horror, and in the end, the woman cuts off her own tongue and sacrifices herself. Now the scene cuts back to the present, where we see that inside Mijin's box is that woman's tongue. That's when it clicks that this cult is collecting body parts, but only from the people who were involved in evil activities or paranormal stuff. Now the cult leader takes the tongue away, and again, Park calls Si-kyung outside, but this time all 5 cult members see Si-kyung talking to him, and now everyone is suspicious of her. Just then, the cult leader shows up again and asks Jung for his offering. Jung had brought a huge box, and now we're about to find out the story behind whatever is inside that box. Now, this third story is where we meet Junhee. After partying with her friends, she comes back home late at night to her new apartment. But the moment she walks in, her bedroom door suddenly slams shut on its own. When Junhee checks inside, there was no one there. And then there's a knock at the front door. Junhee asks who's there, and outside there's this woman, and she says that she used to live here and Junhee's apartment is haunted. She warns Junhee that there are charms placed around her apartment, and no matter what happens, she must not remove them or else the spirit will unalive her. Junhee then nervously opens the door, but no one was outside. Anyway, later that night, Junhee wakes up to a loud noise coming from upstairs. She goes to complain to the guy living above, but he flat flat out denies making any noise. In fact, he tells her just to move out of the apartment while she still can. Then when Junhee was coming back downstairs, another neighbor is creepily staring at her. The neighbor starts chanting some weird prayer under her breath, which freaks Junhee out, and she rushes back inside her apartment. The next night, we can actually see an evil spirit near Junhee. There was a door near Junhee that time, and it slammed shut on its own as the lights begin to flicker, making Junhee finally believe her apartment is really haunted. Later, when Junhee tries to sleep, she ends up in a sleep paralysis, completely frozen as the evil spirit stands over her. The next day, Junhee meets up with her friend and tells her everything. Her friend then shares a ritual that her grandmother used to do to get rid of spirits. That night, Junhee performs the ritual. First, she opens all the door in her apartment. Then she goes to the front door and asks if anyone's out there, because according to the ritual, the spirit should respond from outside the house. And right then, that same woman from earlier shows up again and says that I used to live here and your apartment is haunted. She advised her not to remove any charms, but Junhee yells back and tells her that there are no charms in her house. But now the woman is banging on the door, screaming like a maniac and trying to get in. Junhee angrily opens the door and the woman then rushes inside. She frantically searches the entire place and then she stops and tells Junhee that years ago, cops found dead bodies in this apartment, but all their heads were missing. Turns out this woman only came back to warn Junhee. Then suddenly the lights go out and all sorts of paranormal things started happening in the apartment. The woman screams and runs away and Junhee chases after her for answers, but her neighbor grabs Junhee and stops her. The neighbor yells at Junhee to not trust that woman. She tells Junhee to go back inside and burn all the charms, claiming that the real cause of all the trouble are those charms. Poor Junhee is already scared to death, so she goes back in and starts investigating her entire apartment. Surprisingly, she finds charms hidden all over the place and she burns them all. Then, Junhee hears a noise coming from behind the wall, and when she peels out the wallpaper, she finds even more charms stuck there. But right then, her neighbor appears behind her. That's when Junhee finally realizes the neighbor is actually the spirit. The neighbor tricked her into burning all the protection charms, and now the evil spirit grabs Junhee and brutally unalive her, ripping her head completely off her body in the end. Then the scene cuts back to the cult, and inside Young's huge box, it was Junhee's dead body. Seeing that completely freaks Si-kyung out, and outside the apartment, Park shows up and spots the body as well through the window, and he was horrified. But just then, one of the cult member notices Park watching, and all hell breaks loose. The entire cult chases after him, trying to catch him, and meanwhile, Si-kyung opens the final offering box, and that's where we learn the last story. Now in this final story, we meet a guy named Dae-ho, who wakes up in the morning, goes to turn off his alarm, but suddenly realizes there is a metal wire tied around his neck, going straight into a hole in the wall. Dae-ho starts pulling the wire, but on the other side, his neighbor starts screaming. Turns out, she was tied up as well. Both of them panic, pulling on the wire in the opposite directions, but eventually, they decide to stop and work together to figure a way out. Suddenly, the TV switches on, showing a 3-minute countdown, meaning one of them is going to die in exactly 3 minutes. Dae-ho scrambles to grab his phone but fails, and the timer hits 0, and instantly, the wire tightens around his neck. Obviously in pain, Dae-ho collapses, but when he looked back at the hole in the wall, there was blood pouring out from it. Dae-ho panics, thinking his neighbor is dead. But then, another 3-minute timer starts. Dae-ho now realizes he only has 3 minutes to save himself or he's next. That's when he spots the tube light above his bed, and then he struggles for a while, climbs onto the bed and somehow manages to smash the tube light. He falls onto the broken glass and cuts himself badly, but he was able to grab a shot before the time runs out. But right then, his neighbor, who was somehow still alive, starts yanking the wire with all her strength. Obviously, she was desperate to save herself as well. And now Deho realizes if he doesn't fight back, he's gonna die. Both of them starts pulling on the wire, and in the end, his poor neighbor head snaps violently and she dies. Deho then uses the glass shot to cut the wire just in time and saves himself. But even though he survives, the whole thing was the work of some evil force, and in the next second, the evil spirit wraps more wires around Deho, trapping him forever. Wire come from every direction. It was clear Deho is going to die as well. Now back in the present, Si-kyung finds a bottle inside the offering box and it was filled with Deho's blood. Anyway, now in the present, somehow Park manages to escape from the cult and makes it back to his car. The cult member also return to their apartment and continue their prayers because for him the ritual was way more important. Si-kyung tells Park to call the police because she's now sure this cult is way more dangerous than they thought. But right then, the cult leader asks Si-kyung to bring her offering. Si-kyung nervously takes the money and places it in front of the cult leader. But here's where we find out that the cult leader had intentionally given Si-kyung the wrong instructions. Because the truth is, to fully awaken the demon, they need exactly 6 body parts. And turns out, the cult leader had already suspected that Si-kyung was an undercover reporter, which is why she was the only one not told to bring a body part. Now when Si-kyung realizes this, she completely panics, but it was too late. The cult members grab her and the cult leader comes forward and brutally cuts off Si-kyung's ear with scissors. Now they finally have all 6 body parts which they place inside a box. All the cult members start chanting and Si-kyung sits in a corner holding her ears, completely traumatized. Meanwhile, outside the building, instead of calling cops, Park calls his friend and asks for another camera so he can secretly film the cult activities. Then when Park gets the camera, he goes back to the apartment and to his surprise, this time the apartment door was unlocked. Park then slowly goes inside the apartment and reaches the altar, only to find out that Si-kyung is sitting there and she was chanting prayers because now she was totally under the demon's control. Si-kyung suddenly then stands up and starts chanting louder and louder, and the moment she does, something starts happening to Park. He collapses in pain, his entire body starts shaking, and Park tries to escape for his life, but he couldn't, because now whatever curse is there, it has taken over Park and Si-kyung as well. And in the end of this movie, the demon finally awakens and Si-kyung looks at him with this twisted smile. She was completely overjoyed, and that's where the movie ends. So this was the recap video of the movie Body Parts, Korean horror, and I hope you have liked this video. If you have, then please subscribe the channel and give this video a thumbs up. I really need your support to grow further. If you want to watch this movie, there's a link to my Telegram channel in the description box. If that link does not work, just go to Telegram and put my channel's name in the search bar. How and when you can find it on Telegram will be revealed on the channel, so go join that. I'm mostly active on Insta, so you can follow me there as well. And look into my other channel where we discuss about the mysteries of the world. All the links are in the description box. For now, I see you all in the next one. Till then, stay awake, cause they always see you.